Hi, everyone. Welcome to our noon webinar. I wanted to go ahead and set up our Spanish interpretation, so I will hand it over to Paula.
Buenos días a todos. Estamos en el webinar y para poder escuchar todo en español pueden ir abajo y seleccionar en la ruedita del mundo el lenguaje español para escuchar el audio en español.
So I just started that for Spanish interpretation at the bottom. Just want to welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Haley Figueroa, and I work in DPS in our substance use prevention team. We host these webinars every month, focusing on different prevention topics that may be interesting to you and your children. Really excited today to be focusing on digital safety and wellness. We have Brian Dino, who is a DPS graduate, as well as a part of our DPS Ed Tech team. His role in DPS is really to educate school communities about safety and how to smartly navigate the online world. So some highlights from his career is he served as the Common Sense Educator Coordinator for the Colorado schools and also launched the DPS High School Technology Program. So without further ado, Brian will present for us, and then just a few logistics. We'll have a presentation about 40 minutes. There will be an opportunity at the end to ask Brian questions. The way to do that on Zoom webinar is you should see a little icon on your bottom toolbar next to participants that says Q&A. So just feel free to load those questions in there as they come up for you. And then we'll have time after Brian's presentation to be able to get to those questions. So welcome, Brian.
All right. Thanks, Haley. It's nice to see everybody here today. And also mention, I was a DPS parent. We have 2 kids now who are out of high school, but one of them attended DPS schools, elementary and middle school. And it was during this whole media onslaught and frenzy. So a lot of the things I'm going to share with you today, I've had a chance to personally experience. So a few logistics here on the slide here. I realize not everybody may be able to stay for the whole hour, but there's a slide link there, and you can just go to that link and you'll have the slides here. There are a lot of hyperlinks in the slide, so this is the main slide link there, and you can share it out with whomever if we have school support professionals joining or other counselors. But there's the slide deck. And I thought we'd talk about, again, setting parents up for success, certainly talk about media reviews and media literacy, because as you know, there are a lot of media choices now, and share some practical tips for families on how to navigate this wide world. Let me also just say that this is a Zoom meeting and recording. We're going to try to make it as interactive as possible with your questions. But I'm part of a wonderful ed tech team here, and we do this. We have presenters that will go to schools, and we did many sessions last year, and over the last several years, we'll come to your school and do this presentation. And I know it's tough to get parents out at this time of the year, but if you're planning your spring events, think about that. They're good. A lot of schools have parent coffees, or they have PTO meetings. Some schools have SEL nights where they have parents can pick from, like they can go to 10 minutes, 15 minutes to hear about social emotional health for your kids, and 15 minutes to hear about raising media smart kids. So think about that. But in person, it's really good. And not only because it's interactive, but also what happens at a lot of those in-person programs is parents get to connect with each other, and they can share good tips. Just in the last one of the last sessions at an elementary school, the parents are like, my kid wants a cell phone in 5th grade. What are you folks doing? And some parents just gave some golden tips that worked in their community as far as how they handle that. So anyway, there's our link up on this slide here. Contact us and we'll get you a presenter for your next school or even community event. But we're happy to come out in person and do that. And again, I see some folks who just joined us. So on the bottom of this slide here, there's a link, tinyurl.com/DPS Kids November 23. I do not think that's case sensitive, so you can just, I'll type it in lowercase, but there's the slide link here of what I'll be going over. All right, and again, a lot of this content derives from Common Sense Media, which if you haven't heard of them, here's their main slide here. They are a trusted guide for families. In Denver Public Schools, we've been partnering with them for the last probably 13 years. And they're the nation's largest nonprofit dedicated to guiding parents on the safe and smart use of media and technology. And we like them because they have nothing to sell. They're very transparent about where they get their funding from. They are a nonprofit. And as you know, in this age of media and the internet, people are always maybe trying to sell stuff. So you'll see a lot of their content here, and we'll be referring to their resources on their website. And I think just for our participants here, if they could just think, and I think we've turned off the chat for now, but what are your biggest concerns about digital media? Just think about that for a moment. And Haley, I don't know if I think we might have turned chat off, but that's okay. We can leave it off. But what are your biggest concerns? I'll just share with you what we hear from families. Who's going to be able to get to my kid? There's so many choices, and there's still a lot of fear of strangers contacting my kid, inappropriate content coming in too soon. So those are some of the concerns that we hear. But also along those lines, what are some of digital media's biggest strengths? And in our work, being with the ed tech team, we know a lot of our curriculum is now online, but it's also interactive. I was just in a classroom this morning, and a teacher had a wonderful multimodal lesson where she was diagramming vocabulary on the board, and then she went out to an audio recording and heard another person's voice, and then she showed short video clips. So all of that within one space, and the kids were able to access it in a variety of modalities. But here's really our guiding question for today, and that's this: how do we use media in balance as a family, find quality content, set expectations around healthy use to prevent conflict, and raise media savvy consumers and creators? So that's our guiding question. And again, it's a very fast changing space, and I'll just say the good news is, if those of you watching, if you're worried about doing it right, you're probably not doing it wrong. There's no one silver bullet, but we'll give you some practical tips here that we found that work for families, and kind of give you an overall framework for trying to get answers to this guiding question here. Here's just some starter tips, some best practices around digital media. The first one is use media with your kid. Now, this works really well with K through 5. We know that. But as much as co-viewing you can do with your kids, and especially young kids, the better you will be at setting boundaries, explaining to them your values. So that's a good cardinal rule, especially with young kids. Of course, as they get older, if they're like our teenagers now, they will want to distance yourself, but try to use as much media with your kid as possible. Second one, you got to have rules. And we have a link here to a family media agreement. Actually, link out there. There's several media agreements. There's a very simple one from Common Sense Media in English and Spanish. There's a very comprehensive one there. And then I think another one. But we often see these introduced when a student wants a cell phone. And that's a good place to do it. I personally, our family used these when our kids said, "Hey, thinking about a cell phone." Like, well, it's a very serious thing, and let's talk about a media agreement. And there's some nice suggestions on those media agreements that families find helpful. Some of them fill it out, put it on the fridge, however you want to manage it in your family. Third, set expectations and rehearse. let them know again about using age appropriate media, and we'll show you in a moment the best way to find that age appropriate media. But you got to rehearse too. So what I mean by rehearse, so example, get a lot of questions about sleepovers. All right, the middle school sleepover, are when you go there, what are going to be the rules on cell phones? Do all the kids put them in the room and lock them away, or if I'm walking home from school, what are the expectations with media? So that's key. Commercials and advertising, try to have those conversations with your kids. We know advertising really much rules the internet, so especially now, sometimes it's not easy to keep track of who's selling you what. Digital citizenship, introduce that. A lot of our schools are teaching this, but especially as they get older and have a device, the digital footprints, how they can really last forever. Our second to last one, encourage media creation as well as consumption. A lot of our kids are consuming a lot of media, watching a lot, but try to get that balance down to like 50-50 so that they're creating, they're writing, or they're, I had a neighbor whose kid was watching a lot of YouTube baking shows, and like they became a baker. So now you're creating, you're adding and engaging your mind. And of course, reading is also an active part of consumption. So again, if there's too much consumption going on, try to get that creation balance back. And we'll show you again on the Common Sense site, they have lots of ratings and reviews of free resources for that. Finally, as our kids did with us, is model the behavior you want to see in your kids. And there's a little hyperlink there to a good article from Common Sense. But the best parenting advice I ever got is don't talk about it, be about it. Because as your kids get older, they're going to model what they see at home. And one of the best pieces of advice I got when our kids were really little, it was try to narrate what I'm doing on this screen. Because when they're really little, they don't know what you're doing there. So we always tried to narrate. Well, let me look that up, or let me see what somebody thinks. Here is what I'm doing on this, so they know the purpose of using this device. And of course, we tried to, a lot of sleepless nights. We tried to do a lot of the email at night, so our screen time was limited. But just a reminder, they're always watching us and how we use these screens. So how do you pick? Oh, man, there is so much out there, right? And you got to be choosy as a parent, because a lot of people want to influence your kids. And so to be choosy, here's what Common Sense says here. They want parents to use high quality, and high quality is everybody's a publisher now, right? Every adult has one of these, or every teenager, so everybody can publish, right? Oh, I'm a YouTube influencer. Look at my channel. I just ran into a middle schooler I hadn't seen in a couple of years. He said, "Mister, join my channel." So he's a publisher now. But anyway, we want to use high quality, age appropriate content that's positive, and where screen time is balanced with other parts of their life. So how can you do that as a parent? And here's the Common Sense ratings. We love these. I loved them as a parent. It's a good way to set boundaries, because what Common Sense Media does is they review over 34,000 pieces of media. Chances are, if your kid wants to do it on a screen, listen to it, watch it, interact with it, they will review it. And they give you little age appropriate ratings. They tell you the nutritional value and the educational value. And so let me just go to their screen here. I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment here and navigate to their review page. And then here's their review page. So this is very helpful for parents, because again, how do you pick? And again, this is also the Common Sense site. And I'm on the review page here. Let me minimize my screen. So up here, you have the best movie lists. You have for every category, they have a best of list, best books, best games, best podcasts, best apps. All right. So you can look at their best app list, and you can filter by age. Great games to play with your kids. They have lots of lists, which you'll find helpful. So if you, let's say you're looking for a tween app, here's some right here. Some don't require Wi-Fi. So this is their ratings page. You can also, if you join, I'm logged in here. I believe you get, let's see if we could pull up, well, I'm going to pull up one that a principal just told me about, we know about. It's called Snapchat. Let's look at how they rate Snapchat. And here's Snapchat. So it's 16 plus. Now I'm going to tell you a lot of the common sense ratings. They probably are a little more conservative, because 16 plus is like, well, that's a high schooler. But you know, each family is different, so you have to weigh for yourself. But this is their rating, and you can see you actually get 3 in-depth reviews like this a month. And here's their in-depth review. So again, it's 16 plus. They give you a summary there, and it rates it on positive messages, ease of play, other categories, and then what parents need to know. And then there's community reviews. Okay, so that's a pretty in-depth review. For their major media categories, under parent tips and FAQs, you can see by platform, they have in-depth articles. So all the major media platform, TikTok, Snapchat, Minecraft, they'll go more in depth there. So use these ratings. Again, anything your kid wants to do, and it's impossible as a parent to know. Say they come home and they're listening to a new YouTube influencer. They look at a lot of YouTube channel reviews. So you're like, oh, you're following so-and-so. Let's look at that. Or what is this Roblox? So let me go down to, you know, Roblox, and there's a whole, is it safe for kids? You can educate yourself and see what they think about it. So use these ratings. In our parenting, the kids really had to, as they got older, in upper elementary, they had to go to Common Sense and find something that was appropriate, like when they wanted to watch a movie. And of course, they didn't like it, but you're setting those boundaries, and hopefully when they get older, they'll set those boundaries for themselves. And when our daughter became as a babysitter, you know, there's parents would say, well, tell me what you do as a babysitter. Are you on your phone a lot, or what content? Like, well, you look at the Common Sense ratings and make sure something's appropriate for your 4-year-old. And we encourage parents to use them, especially for the major media platforms coming up, which we're going to get to. So those are the Common Sense ratings. And again, also the Common Sense site here, and movies, TV, books, games, podcasts. Again, chances are if your kid wants to do it, they are covering it. So I'm going to stop sharing that for a moment. I'll come back to the main slide deck here. And my screen sharing is paused. Let's go here. Stop share. Okay, for some reason, it's not bringing back my main slide deck there. It says my screen sharing is paused. So let's see here. Try that one more time. Share screen and share. Haley, getting a little technical difficult.
No worries.
It says my screen sharing is paused here, so that's a little weird.
I was seeing something that said double click on it.
Okay, let's try it one more time. Technology here. Let's go to advanced. No, let's go to basic. Let's see, slide deck. Well, maybe. Why don't you try to share the slide deck? Yeah, and then I will narrate. Okay. Yeah, and then there you go. So I'm seeing that. Yeah. doesn't like me right now. Maybe I didn't pay the Zoom subscription. Okay, so yeah, so one more there after this. And then, so these are the ratings we just talked about. I've heard from parents. I just ran into a principal who we did a parent program for 9 years ago, and now she's a parent of young elementary kid, and she said the best thing she remembers and she uses right now is the common sense ratings in her household. So if you get one thing out of this today, it might be these ratings. All right, next slide there. I've just pulled out the top 3, and just to remind parents, TikTok, again, each family needs to decide what is best for their family. But TikTok, they rate it 15. You just have to decide what works for you. Later on, I'll share you a TikTok case study that will kind of make you pause about trying to push off TikTok as long as you can for your kids. Instagram, again, 15 plus. DPS just joined the state attorney general case against Facebook, who owns Instagram, because Instagram finally has parental controls, but all these media companies out of the gate just said, hey, anybody can join. Snapchat is 16 plus. It works as advertised. I'll tell you that from personal experience at our daughter's middle school. Most of the messages your kid will get on Snapchat, most of them they will receive on Snapchat, you won't see, because you send it, it disappears. Now people can screenshot it, but just imagine that. So I had a principal saying, Brian, we got a couple 3rd graders on Snapchat. Let's talk to the community here. 3rd graders on Snapchat for me personally is just frightening. 5th graders on Snapchat is frightening to me. 6th graders, because it works as advertised. Again, if kids are getting content on their phone, on Snapchat, you probably won't see it because it goes away. And even if you look at the app, say, let me look at your phone, you're not going to see who is influencing them or what's coming in there. And I was part of our daughter's middle school, a very serious Snapchat incident. Fortunately, the girls reported it, inappropriate content coming in, and even the Denver police got involved, and even talking to the top forensics person inside Denver police said 95% of the time Snapchat works as advertised. We can't see it either unless it rises to the threat level of a school or of a person, and then then they have to wait for subpoenas and all that. So push off these 3 as long as you can as a parent. And again, I don't want to sound alarmist, but there's a lot of good stuff they can be, you can get your kids hooked on before they discover these apps, and they probably will. Okay, next one there. So again, just for the younger set, you want to be looking for, apps that are educational, and Common Sense will rate those for you. Again, at this age, try to co-view as much as possible. You're going to help them, co-viewing, learning their letters and numbers. It's going to boost their learning and empathy. One tip I remember too is trying to find a media friend. PBS has lots of great media friends. Somebody told me about Daniel Tiger the other day. So if a kid can have a media friend, that could be their pal as in these very young stages of life. And then, as we'll see on the next slide, though, child development, kids start hitting 8 years old, and they want to start being a little more independent, right? They'll start, that's where we start to see the Minecraft, the Roblox. I want to, hey, Dad, I want to play Animal Jam. What's that about? So a little more risk, especially if you have chat turned on. And, for some of these apps, too, there's no clear end time, so kids can play forever unless you set boundaries. Next slide there. I love this from Common Sense. They're just, in their focus group with kids, they said, adults don't get it. They think I'm addicted to tech. I'm not. I just want to go where my friends are. And we know where the friends are as they get older. The friends are on devices. So it's what they're doing on those devices. Of course, we as parents want to be a big part of. So they're addicted to their friends, and they're going to be hanging out with them, whether in person or online. So on the next slide, you'll see, hey, we got to give them training wheels, right? We have to show them, just like in when we're going to let them ride a bike, we take them to a safe area. We hold the seat for them. We let them find their balance. Same thing here. We want to help them find their balance with regards to media here, and try to prevent some problems as much as we can. Take a look at the next slide here. And generally, when they want their independence, they're going to be asking for a phone. And this is a question we see a lot is, hey, what's the right age for a phone? And you as a parent have to decide. Here's 4 little categories to consider. There's also a link there for about the right age to get a cell phone, but you as a family have to decide, is my kid responsible enough? Are they going to be safe enough? Know that they will probably lose 2 phones. In our family, we lost 3 over the course of 6 years. They're going to be respectful. And the social aspect's going to be key too. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But there are some options before you give a kid a full computer in their pocket, and that's coming up on the next slide here. So think about this. You don't need to give a full smartphone. One, because it's pricey, and chances are, again, if you want to replace this $300, $500 device 3 times, that's going to cost you. You can start with this flip phone. All the cell carriers have brought them back. So chances are you already have a cell phone plan with somebody. Go to that carrier, Cricket, Verizon, whoever it is, and say, what do you got for my kid to start with? And chances are they have a flip phone. And now your kid may not like you. I know our kids didn't, but they're not going to use it as much because it's not as powerful, and they're not going to be on it all the time, but they can still contact you or do some basic things. But it's a good training device. And I can just tell you, after losing daughter lost 2 of these phones, we were out just $75 each, or she was. But it was a good training device. And then, they can move into a regular smartphone. There's also the Gab phone, which in some of our interactive in-person parent presentations, some parents have started their kids with those. So you don't have to give your kid a full-fledged smartphone just to be able to connect with them. All right. Question: social media alienates kids? You think that's myth or truth? Well, as you'll see here, put that space bar, Miss Haley, and it's a myth. So a lot of teens have made new friends online. And not to generalize, but common sense will tell you a lot of boys gravitate towards video games. During COVID, I never thought I'd buy our boy a headset, but we did. And he was able to maintain friendships or develop new ones by gaming. And so that's a new way for our kids to connect. You'll see some other stats from Common Sense here. A lot of boys be connected. And then, of course, social media is just part of our world now. A lot of teens find support through that. Let's take a look at that next slide. These are, depending on how long you've been a parent, or you yourself have been using social media, the red flags, all of these things which scare parents. And again, I don't want to sound too negative, but let me just back up too, because with the Common Sense ratings here, find something your kid can gravitate to. Again, whether it's a media character, a performer. A child came trick-or-treating last night and had she was Gwen Stefani as like a 9-year-old. And the mom said, that is all what she's about. So find something you can say yes to. I was always the parent of no. Find something they can say yes to. Because again, there are a lot of these red flags, but work towards their passions or find something that they want to gravitate towards. If we look at the next slide, there's a link here to, again, Common Sense. Can't say enough about them. They're pretty balanced in their coverage and very current. What's highlighted in yellow here, hey, anything you're going to let your kid do, use that app first, okay? And see what's coming in their feed. Our team also does presentations for kids on we call good digital citizenship. And sometimes phones aren't allowed there, but I'll ask a kid, hey, can I see what do you have on your phone? So if you have not seen, how do I say this, a kid's Instagram feed, and you know them, or you have a relative or a nephew or a niece, just say, can I just see what's on your feed? And just see that and just picture, do I want my kid to have this access to this content yet? And you might be surprised at what's on a kid's feed. So again, just know, if they're ready for that content, then go ahead. But know that use that app first, or see how it's used in a teen's world, to actually pick up the phone and ask, say, let me see what's coming in to your Instagram feed or TikTok, and you might be surprised. So use it first before you let your child do it. I'm just going to highlight what's in yellow. Again, what we see often is when a kid gets let's say 12-year-old gets a full-fledged phone, and they get everything at once. Oh, I got TikTok. I got Snapchat. Snapchat is a teen sensation. We were able to hold our kids off till high school, but that's pretty tough to do. But what we see is everybody gets everything at once: Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, all that. And it is so much. And as you can see in the middle here, Common Sense just released a report. The average tween gets a staggering 237 notifications a day. So they can't manage that. They could turn them all off, but then everything else gets crowded out, right? Their studies, whatever else. So once you just pick one app and see how they're doing with it, okay? Try one and then ramp it up from there. The one thing I'll say at the bottom here again, if you hold off a cell phone late, the big thing is some kids might be left out. And we had that with our child, because kids start arranging their own play dates or gatherings, and your kid's like, I can't get in on that. So you have to decide. Parents, again, this is where connecting with parents at your school will be helpful, to say, can you text me as the parent, and I will arrange it. But I don't want my kid yet. They're not ready to have all of these text messages. We're focusing on other things right now, but communicate with me so they feel included. And there's other ways to do that too, but start with one app. Don't give them all the adult stuff right now. The next slide, you'll see, again, set those time limits. When we ask kids in our assemblies, hey, how many of you charge your device in your bedroom? A lot of them raise their hands, which is still surprising. So even when it's in the bedroom, they know there's something, am I missing something? So get it out of the bedroom. That might be the simplest thing you can do while your kid is still developing. And again, once you introduce this, there's more work for a parent. There's no doubt about that. There's screen time on the Apple platform. There's Family Link, and you can really set up time limits if you want. Set those time limits. One parent shared a tip. She bought a $6 manual alarm timer, and when the child came home from school, he'd set it for 30 minutes. He got 30 minutes of game time, and when that rang, he had to do something other than what was on the screen. Go outside, run in place, and he managed that himself. So again, set those time limits, but teach themselves to eventually set their time limits. So when they're older, they have an easier time to self-regulate. And when they do have a feed, this is a great entry point for you as a parent. Hey, who you following? What are they talking about? What are kids talking about? And it could be for our family, it was like, oh wow, you are, especially when it comes to, this is where relying on other experts, your social worker at your school, your psychologist, especially when it comes to dieting and looks, your kids might be following a lot of folks. Okay. I heard from a parent who's like, my kid's on this new regimen of eating and dieting, and it's because he's got this, he has this influencer. Like, what? So ask them who they're following, how to curate it. So you, again, you know what's in their world, and it can be very fascinating too, and a great conversation starters. But you want to know who's influencing them. The AAP, not AARP. Some folks might belong to AARP, which is a great organization too. But AAP is the American Academy of Pediatrics. They have some great conversation talking points, because if you're like me and you're like, hey, how do I even start that conversation? Here's a link here. This Dr. Radesky here, she's got some really good strategies just for getting conversations started. And again, these are conversations most of us as parents never had with our parents, because we had 3 channels, right? You had 3 main media channels and the newspaper, and nobody could access my kid. But once this is in play, it's a new world. So another good resource on this link here. Here's just a case study here, just with TikTok. Again, where our team advocates and works with schools on educating kids about media literacy, what's credible, but also those algorithms. Once you click on something or look at something, they start feeding you content. And you can see here, just this was just 6 months ago. The Washington Post did a study of like, let's just get a new phone and let's get onto TikTok. And as soon as you start clicking on things, you can see here on the 3rd video, as a young woman, within 5 minutes, they started getting fed content that most parents probably would say, I don't want my kid seeing that. So those algorithms really do feed the content to your kid that you may not want. So just be aware of that before you give them an app. But you can see that case study on that link in the article. A little bit about cyberbullying here, and then we're going to close up just a bit, because I want to get to our library resources. Again, I'm talking a lot. Have at the very second slide of this presentation, let one of us come out from our ed tech team to talk to you, because or to lead one of these, because you'll be able to hear from other parents. So the next slide here, Haley, best approach to cyberbullying. Again, try to get your kid to be an upstander. If anything happens, try to get screenshots if you can, and then I'll first of all go to the school. If you see incidents, we don't want you to try to handle it with a parent or on social media. First, go to the school, say, hey, here's what's happening. I have some evidence. We got to solve this. So that's really the best approach to bullying we have. And again, work with your providers at the school, social workers and your support staff. Just some stats from Common Sense here. These are just kind of, these stats vary a bit, so just use them as ballpark figures. But most, you can see the 4% of kids have very few interactions where predators try to make contact. So we know it's a concern of parents, but I put this, we have this slide here just to show you kind of what kids are doing here, but use them as a ballpark figure. Again, remind kids when they're putting content out there. Once they do it, they lose control of it. As soon as they share that photo, we talk about the internet's written in pen. So talk to your kids about that sharing. We look at the next slide here. Here's a link to our digital citizenship. It's straight from Common Sense Education. And a lot of our schools are using this content, but they have very quality lessons you can even do at home. They just introduced a new AI set of lessons that you can be doing with your kids. We'll also be incorporating that into some parts of the curriculum here. So Denver schools have been using this for probably about 12 years now. And I'd probably say 80% of the schools in the country use their curriculum because it's very relevant, but you can go see for yourself here. And I like this little meme or reminder, choose, check, and chat. When our kids are little, we're going to choose for them. When they're tweens, we want them to start making good choices. Let them choose. Let them know you're going to check in with what they're doing. Not necessarily to catch them, but to help them. Say, hey, I'm going to check in because I want to help you make good choices, and then follow it up with the chat. So choose, check, and chat with regards to their media choices, and I think that's a good little reminder for parenting in this media age. I think we'll just tap through this one. Parents do spend more time on. Tap again there for us, Haley. Parents spend a lot of time on that. We get questions. How can I track my kid? Tap again there, Haley. We have some resources here if you want to do some home internet filtering. We don't recommend any because we don't go into parents' homes, but here's one here if you want to do home internet filtering. And on the next slide, you'll see here's a couple other links out to other reviews. The Today Show has reviews of cell phones and other things they just did. But if you're paying money to a major provider like Comcast or CenturyLink, they probably have parental controls built in, so check with them first. But here's some options here if you're curious. Our DPS Chromebooks, depending on the age of your kid, they might have their own Chromebook, but we safeguard it pretty well. If you see anything that's not looking right on there, let us know. We'll report it to the school, okay? They shouldn't be able to delete their browsing history. Those are the safeguards that we've put on there. And just an option here as we're getting towards holiday sales. The tablet option for young kids might be the easiest, so this can be a consideration rather than trying to fight with a kid for getting a cell phone. But a tablet here could be an option, and some of these might be really discounted here for the holiday sales, but it's a little bit easier to manage what your young kids are doing. Next slide. So yeah, try to build it up, set those clear expectations, communicate the consequences there, check in with them, try not to be too sneaky. It's something you as a parent have to decide, as the kids get older, how much am I going to monitor? But, try to have fun together, start those practices early. We'll see on the next slide here. Just we're the only school district that probably spends close to $500,000 a year on these resources you're seeing here. Your kid has access to ebooks and databases at their fingertip. They just need their DPS Google account. So if you look at the next slide here, they have access to all of these. Pebble Go for K through 2. They got an encyclopedia online now because you can't. I don't think you can buy the old book encyclopedias. But these are all the resources your child has. They have Discovery Education now, and they just need to log in with their Google account at home. So don't send them to like Google. They're like, let's go research. If that is, let's go find information about this topic. You don't need to send them to Google where you're going to get some ads and some non-credible source. Send them to these sources, and plus these have no ads, so that's even better. So next slide here, we also have ebooks and audiobooks. So there's a link to our Sora collection, and if it's not there, your child can request it. There's audiobooks and also magazines. So have them take advantage of this. The next slide here is a really powerful graphic of what just audio does to promote literacy. And our former superintendent swore to me. She goes, when her kids were little, every night she would play an audiobook to them in English or Spanish from the collection. And so they would go to bed listening to the written word. So if you have an old cell phone, that's a good use for that. Don't throw away those old cell phones. Have them log in and play an audiobook. Okay, so especially the younger ages. Audio really promotes literacy. All right, so a few other resources here. And if you in yellow, if you want to subscribe to that parent newsletter, there's a link. That's the Common Sense Parent Newsletter. It's they're always on top of things and give solid advice. And believe it or not, there's also a fraud hotline, which I sent to a parent the other day because everybody's trying to get scammed, especially seniors are the biggest target. But if you want to know if something's real, you could talk to a real person and say, hey, you know anything about this scam? And there's also an article there to how to keep your kids safe. So some other resources there. Also, you might qualify for $10 a month internet from Comcast, Internet Essentials. So here's a link here. When you call them, it's in English and Spanish. So you can just tell them what school you're at and they'll see if you qualify for that. But no equipment, no credit check. And for $10 a month, that's a really good price if you qualify. $10 a month for high-speed internet. So a lot of our families take advantage of that. I'll skip this scenario, but you can come back and look at it. I just wanted to include that. But hey, again, stay engaged. Use those common sense ratings. You know, this is a long haul. As if you're a parent of a young kid, there's no one right answer. And again, if you're worried about doing it right, you're probably not doing it wrong. Let me also, again, just lean on your schools. We work a lot with social workers, psychologists. Lean on that school support staff because they're there. They know the school climate, what's going on. So also lean on those support professionals. All right.
Yes, we got a few questions coming in. So as a reminder, if you would like to ask Brian a question, the Q&A button is on that bottom toolbar of your Zoom screen. So I'll just go ahead and read them and then love to hear from Brian. First one here, how do you educate your kids on security practices, including unique passwords, don't write them down, have a multi-factor authentication, phishing scams, etc.? Is there a good kid-friendly training on this?
Yeah, you know, I think I just saw a piece actually on the Common Sense site on password training for kids. So I would go on the Common Sense site and they have a search button up there, and I would actually say is just search for the word passwords and see. But they have done a piece in the Common Sense lessons too. I believe there's a lesson on setting strong passwords with your kids. So if you, at the end of the slide presentation deck, there's an email for our team and also for me. So if you want to reach out directly to me or our team, we could find you that. Okay. That was on the very, I think, last slide of that slide deck. There was, let me double check. Yep, we had an email. So you can email our team or me directly and we'll get you a couple of resources there.
Yep. And then we have the second question here. At what point does having screen time and downtime have adverse impacts on relationship and trust of parents with their teens? When do you recommend letting teens meter their own usage or at least turning off parental controls on phones and iPads?
That's a good question. I have some thoughts and maybe Haley, if you know from your background. You know, again, you really got to know your kid and see, and it just depends also on your style of parenting. I tell you, when in our house, I mean, our kids will tell you, when they hit upper middle school and high school, they thought, oh my gosh, my parents were so strict in relation to media. And we relied on the common sense ratings. And then even with the cell phone, we had a contract. Some parents tied it to grades. We actually tied it to chores. But we decided in high school not to track them. But we always said we can. And if we feel we have to, you will. I know a lot of parents who use Life. I believe it's called Life 360. And when your kid gets a phone, you can put it on there. You're also going to pay some money, and a lot of parents love it. But you can see everything a kid does on the phone. But it's really up to you as a parent, and I would talk with other parents. But for our style, again, we want our kids coming to us first. If something went, they're going to go to somebody when something's wrong, and you want them to go to somebody, whether it's somebody at the school or a friend, but you also eventually want to know what's going on there. So that trust level is key. But we didn't go down to the, as kids get older, if they're walking home from school, again, that's a big parental concern. But you do have to build that trust, and if you're tracking them, I think it's a good policy to let them know I am tracking you. So just be very transparent. I know one parent who still, as a kid in middle school, she sees everything her kid texts, everything he sees, every text he gets. So she said, just tell your friends when they text you, I see it. So she's very transparent, but that also limits, a lot of things he gets. So you just have to find that balance as part of your parenting philosophy, but it is tough to trust, because your kids will seek their independence. And I think Haley, I had this conversation when I used to support high schools, the counselors would march in the parents and say, tell your kid you have a fake Instagram account, because you do. And so kids know how to get around these things, but if you can find a way to get that trust established early on, so that they're upfront as possible, and hopefully they don't need to set up those fake accounts. But I know the pull of these is very alluring, and those apps.
I appreciate everything you're saying. And I myself have a senior in high school. And as you've seen with your kids, kind of this next stage, next year, he is going to have to be kind of monitoring his own usage. And so I think all of the skills that you covered in your presentation about kind of how to just do that in a short sort of progressive way, I think it's helpful. So I don't know if I have anything more to add, just that it's definitely something that I'm thinking about as a parent right now as well. And I think it's really relevant, really good question. I think the other point is we cover all types of prevention topics, and it always comes back to that relationship, right? That warm, supportive, loving relationship that you have with your child, and how so many things, get better, right? And can buffer your kids from risk, whether it's social media, substance use, whatever the high risk behavior might be, really comes down kind of to that loving, supportive relationship. So.
Yep. And don't be as they get older. Again, I can't stress enough, this is tough as a parent. If they're not coming to you, make sure they know somebody to go to. And in some schools, it's a trusted social worker or a trusted teacher. But especially if it comes to bad content, because I just know in some conversations, kids oh my gosh, what they could see on these phones, if they need to talk, they may not come to you as a parent, because I hear that if I tell my parent, they're going to take away my phone. But you want to establish that relationship somewhere. Say, hey, if you can't, Mr. Jones, he seems really good. If you have anything awful that comes up, let him know or that. But just again, those school relationships, as we talked about, absolutely. It may not even be at the school. It could be a coach, could be somebody else, but the relationships are absolutely key. That was one of my hardest learnings. Is well, why aren't they talking to me? It's well, because you're their dad, and now they're a freshman in high school. That was the number one when I used to teach high school. That was the number one thing that parents would say is my ninth grader all of a sudden doesn't talk to me anymore. Well, it ain't cool as much. They're talking to each other, but there are some other adults here that they do have, that they can talk to.
Well, wonderful. I think that's all the questions we see, but just as a reminder to everyone, we had over 100 people register for this, and everyone will receive an email next week with the link to Brian's slides, which I also put into the chat, as well as the recording of this. It will also be on our website, which is dpsprevention.org/webinars. So thank you so much, Brian.
Okay, thank you all. And again, just stay with it, stay engaged, try to, again, if you're a parent of young kids, try to connect with your school and let the ed tech team know. Again, you have the slide deck, you can contact us. And as you're planning some spring events with parents, generally you might only have one with them. but let us know if we can come out and support you with an in-person presentation and help your community get connected.